But what fascinated me watching the game is when one time only, and it was one time only, the cameras went to Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer was shaking his head under his mask. It was the fourth quarter. They were down 15. The game was over. And all I kept thinking about was what is in his mind. He had promised the world to himself and to Clippers fans. He had brought in Kawhi Leonard, traded for Paul George, traded away multiple first-round picks to get Paul George. Paul George had just given a quote after the game saying, hey, to us, it was not championship or bust. Talking about the lack of chemistry, the lack of spending time together, saying we've got to be together more as a team. Got to spend more time together. Steve Ballmer's listening to this and watching it after having paid what is now the second highest price for a franchise when he bought the Clippers for a little over $2 billion from Donald Sterling, only surpassed by the Mets deal and what Steve Cohen paid for the Mets. And he's got to be thinking to himself, is Doc Rivers the right coach? Is Elgin Baylor the right executive? Is Paul George the right number 2 superstar? What do we not have that teams like the Miami Heat have or the Denver Nuggets, who he's seen are in the conference finals? It's pretty easy to see what the Lakers have. You can say they've got LeBron and Anthony Davis. What do I do if I'm Steve Ballmer? The first thing, Steve, if you're listening to Nothing Personal or watching on YouTube, is you do nothing today. You're way too emotional. You can't even do the 30-minute rule. You have to do the 3-day rule. You have to do nothing. Don't make a decision on Doc Rivers. Don't make a decision on any of your players, your assistants, nothing. Nobody. Take 3 days and let the loss marinate through you and then crap it out, and then you're done with it. But once you do that, you start thinking about the fact that Doc Rivers has blown more 3-1 leads than any coach in playoff history. 3 times in the playoffs, he's blown a 3-1 lead. Do you start questioning the big haul that you gave away to get Paul George, who in the fourth quarter and in many games this season disappeared, literally disappeared? In theory, you could spend time deciding what you're going to do with your free agents. Are you willing to go over the luxury tax? It says here that Steve Ballmer, this is, when I say it says here, this is what I'm saying. Steve Ballmer will spare no expense to win a ring. He is going to realize that he needs to do better. He will let his team go over the salary cap. He will let his team pay the tax. They are the team that in 50 years has not been to a conference finals. Forget winning an NBA title. 50 years. That is the greatest, longest streak in all 4 major sports. Doc Rivers has been coaching there since 2013, made the playoffs every year, but 1 maybe. Bunch of first-round exits, bunch of second-round exits. Doc Rivers isn't the problem. How he managed the team and the minutes was because his guys were gassed. He didn't use COVID as an excuse or leaving the bubble, but don't forget they had 3 players leave the bubble. They had a death in the family. They had a death in the good friend. Remember the whole chicken wing strip club incident? That was all around the Lakers. A lot of distractions. They did load management with Leonard and George before COVID, where they weren't seeing a lot of time. And on CBS Sports HQ, we would talk about the fact, maybe even on Nothing Personal, Coca, that in basketball, having a team play together is how you are successful, so that players know where their teammate's going to be without even looking. They know when their teammate's cutting to the basket or curling around off a screen for an open 3. They feel it. They sense it. It was very telling, the most important play of the game last night. And it was once the game had been decided. But Jokic is in the lane. He gets double teamed, as happened a lot. Doc Rivers did a double team scheme on Jokic. Jamal Murray's man had left him. Jamal Murray cuts to the hoop, which is what you're supposed to do in the real world of basketball. Instead of sitting there on the wing waiting to heave and chuck a three-pointer, when your man goes to a double team, you go to the rim. Jamal Murray goes to the rim. Jokic passes the ball over his head backwards. A perfect pass to Jamal Murray. That comes from playing together. The Clippers would be well served to not think about load management. You've got to get Leonard and George on the same page, because the disappearing act they had in the fourth quarter, as an owner, I'm going to say I dismiss that as a one-off. I'm not going to pay attention to the 50-year drought. I'm not going to worry about Doc Rivers losing 3 out of 4, 3-1 leads. I'm going to focus on the fact that we did not have the chemistry that the Nuggets had, the chemistry that the Heat have, and that chemistry comes with time. Paul George said it. We need time together. I don't like the first part of his quote where he said it was not championship or bust. I want players on my team where every year it's championship or bust, whether you're going to win 20 games or 80 games or 100 games in baseball or 40 games in basketball or 60 games. It should be championship or bust, or don't be in the middle. Let it be lottery or bust. But don't finish in the 7 seed or the 5 seed or the 2 seed and lose in the second round and say, hey, it's all good. There's nothing good about that. Steve Ballmer's got some decisions to make. He's going to make them. You just wait.